What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? This is Too Raw for TV, and it just occurred to me. I mean, I knew it was coming up, but it just occurred to me that tomorrow is March. Tomorrow is March 9th, 2021, and this will mark. It's hard to believe, man. This will be the 24th anniversary of the passing of Christopher Wallace, also known as the Notorious B.I.G. And me personally, he was my favorite rapper of all time. Back then I was a high school kid, what I'm saying? A big dude, dark skinned, not necessarily what is society's perception, especially America's perception of what's considered handsome. Back then a handsome black man was considered somebody like Jamal Moore or Denzel Washington or Tyrese or some motherfucker like that. You know what I'm saying? Uh, but what Biggie Smalls showed as a performer, yeah, it was a gimmick. I mean, it was his, I don't want to say facade, but it was his rap facade. He showed that, it was more about your attitude, how you present yourself, rather than always about you being the most handsome motherfucker in the world, right? Um, Unfortunately, as he came to prominence and East Coast rap came back to prominence, especially New York rap came back to prominences at that time. Rap was becoming a lot more regional. By that I mean you had people from the East, rappers that represent New York or the East Coast culture of rap. You had your Southern rappers. You started having your Midwest rappers, um, and the West Coast. And when you think about it, it was almost like old school regional wrestling on wax. Guys would maybe dish each other on wax, but it never usually got past that. Now you did have your exceptions, you know what I'm saying? But hip hop had become more hardcore by the mid 90s. 93, 94, there was a definite shift in hip hop to being what they would call gangster rap, which I don't like that fucking term, but that's what they would call it. You know what I'm saying? And you had a lot of people, a lot of older black people in the community that was, condemning it, saying that it was devil's music and it was evil and all this shit, which is kind of funny because these same, people like C. Dolores Tuckers and others, right? When they were younger, their parents chastised them for listening to Little Richard and Little Richard or James Brown or you know what I'm saying, uh, any type of mid 1950s artist, Chuck Berry, because they considered that devil's music, gyrating and subtle sexual innuendo and songs, but it is what it is. We're doing the same thing with our generation. We consider them listening to a bunch of garbage, so it's cyclical. But there was a huge, huge divide. We know that, right? The East Coast, West Coast thing, which started between two individuals, two guys that used to be friends, Notorious B.I.G. and also known as Biggie Smalls, and Tupac Shakur. These guys were friends at one point in time. But, for whatever reason, you know, their friendship deteriorated to the point where they became enemies. Um, you know, it started really when Tupac got shot, supposedly going to record a song. When he got shot going to, what was it, Quad Music Studio? Got the exact name of it. But he go in there, he got shot. Obviously, he got set up. The question is by who? Now, me personally, I don't know if Puffy and Biggie were involved. Okay, I don't think they were involved, but they might have known something was up. That's my thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? Because when you go back on it, Tupac, during an interview on the radio right before the shooting, he was talking about how a lot of hip hop artists were being extorted by gangs, and it's pretty well known that Biggie and Puffy were being extorted. You know, in exchange for protection, you had to pay these guys money. But oftentimes they were strong on these hip hop artists because a lot of these dudes weren't really street. You know what I'm saying? Puffy, don't get me wrong, they were street compared to some other dudes, but they weren't street. So I've read stories about, supposedly Haitian Jack taking Puff Daddy's watch off of his hand and taking money in his jewelry. I've heard stories of Biggie being kind of scared of the Haitians around him and shit. So it makes sense that ultimately it came down to Haitian Jack and Jimmy Henchman, who's also Haitian, being behind Tupac's shooting for talking shit on the radio. But at the time, you know what I'm saying, Tupac was also going through his issue with the rape allegation. So ultimately, Tupac Shakur, who's recovering from this shooting, gets sent to prison. And my theory is this, man. Whenever you have two powerful black men in any situation like this, right? Because we can make an argument that they're the two most powerful figures in hip hop history. Now, I'm not saying the richest. The richest, you got to go with like Jay Z and, you know, P. Diddy and people like that. But as far as their influence, nah. I think they had the greatest influence we've ever seen in hip hop as far as artists is concerned. And as we all know, the devil doesn't like that. You know what I'm saying? The devil doesn't like to see a black messiah in any way, shape, or form. And the devil always likes to see division. So there's stories about people that were talking to Tupac while he was in prison, putting things in his head. Like, why haven't Biggie come down? Why haven't these guys come down to see you? Why haven't they put anything on your books? Why haven't they, um, you know, wrote you? You know, we didn't have emails and shit like that back then, or a system where prisoners can send texts and shit like that. Why do these guys contact you? Supposedly they blowing up, bad boy, and they shout you out on stage, but are they really showing love to you? So this got to Pac's paranoia. He's still, fuming about the shooting situation, and that's how friends can become frenemies and then downright enemies. And the finishing touches was Suge Knight. Suge Knight, you know what I'm saying, came to him, offered him a contract. And as we know, Suge hated the East Coast. Remember the Source Awards? And that's all it took, man. In '96, it was a vengeful Pac. It was a very vengeful Pac. And he had it out for everybody. I mean, that's the thing about it. People forget. It wasn't just Bad Boy. Pac was changed by that shooting. You know, he really was a guy that was all about loyalty. And Pac, from what I've read about him, he was a good dude, and he would give you the shirt off his back. But if he got an inkling that you weren't as loyal to him as he was to you, he would turn on you in a heartbeat. You know what I'm saying? But if you were loyal to him, you had a real true friend. So I don't know, man. I don't know whether it was a combination of people in the way, but it got to the point where the situation seemed irreconcilable, right? And it was really bad. It got so bad. I remember this. It got so bad that I remember at this time, you know, so I'm in high school, right? So early '96, going into middle of '96 summer. I'm in 10th grade at the time, right? It was getting so bad that fights were breaking out. I'm pretty sure you guys in the same age range know what I'm talking about. Fights were starting to break out between people who was repping Bad Boy and people who were repping Death Row in school. And you had to sometimes watch what you said around people. Like if you were around a bunch of dudes that it's crazy because I'm from VA, which is technically the East Coast, right? But you had a lot of motherfuckers that was repping Pac to the fullest. If you said some shit out the way, especially to some street niggas, they might fuck you up because they really repped West Coast, even though they live in Virginia. But then you might also be in a situation where you're around some motherfuckers that rep Bad Boy, and you talk shit about Biggie and them, and they might fuck you up. So I remember talking to my boy Al one time, man. It was the summer of '96. I vividly remember this. It was July or August of '96. And I remember thinking to myself, to him, I said, because this is when he was beefing with not only Bad Boy, but he was beefing with um, um, Nas. Apparently, he was beefing with um, what's the dude from LA, man? Chino XL. He was beefing with Mob Deep, beefing with all of these motherfuckers, beefing with everybody seemingly. And I remember saying, man, I think Pop might get killed, man. I really did because I thought it was getting to the point where things was reaching a boiling point. You know what I'm saying? But little did I know that in that scenario, it was more or less, and this is just my theory, it was a mutiny about to go down. That's as far as I'll go into that one. You know what I'm saying? Then the Tyson Bruce Seldon fight happens, and then shortly thereafter the news broke that Tupac Shakur got shot. Now, initially, I thought that he was going to make it. You know what I'm saying? I thought he was going to make it. He was going to make it because I remember in the early reports they were talking about how he was alert, talking after he got shot. This is before the internet. This is before social media. So you got to go on what you read in the news. You know what I'm saying? You didn't have, you know, bloggers and people who were on the scene that could tell you something in almost an instant what they just saw 3,000 miles away. You had to go with what you read in the newspaper or in magazines later on. But I remember reading, oh, a couple of days later on, supposedly, he had to have a lung removed from damage. That's when I started realizing this is pretty serious. Now, there are some theories that Pac lingered for a reason, and that certain individuals made sure that he didn't leave that hospital. That could be very well true. Okay, and I'll never forget it when he passed away on September the 13th, 1996. Rumors were run rampant throughout school that he had passed away, and it was confirmed sometime that afternoon. And I just remember that being one of the saddest days, of my young life at that time, right? But I remember thinking back in my head, well, at least we still got Biggie, man. At least we still got Biggie. And we had him for only 6 more months. And I still remember the day that he died. I remember the day he died. It was a Sunday. I got up and was flicking through the channels. I didn't have my glasses on 'cause I was just, my glasses was like on the counter next to my bed, right? So I'm flicking through the channels and I see an old spring break performance by Notorious B.I.G. on MTV and something scrolling across the screen at the bottom. Back then, you didn't always have a constant scroll across the screen on TV. That's some shit that started after 9/11. I put my glasses on and I'm seeing the ending part of it. He was 24 years old. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Because I knew Biggie was about that age. Then it starts back up. Notorious B.I.G. was shot and killed last night in Los Angeles, California, at the Audubon something the theater, whatever. The police say blah 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 blah. He was only 24 years old, and the first thing that popped in my head, I remember saying, "Why in the fuck was he out there? Why in the fuck was he out in California? Any fuck? It hadn't been 6 years or 10 years. It was still only 6 months. Bodies were still dropping because of what happened. Why the fuck was he out there? Now, I know a lot of people will say Suge Knight was behind it. Um, I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened. I, you know, I do know this. P. Diddy was very reckless in forcing him out there. Very reckless in forcing Notorious B.I.G. out there. Making money, contractual obligations, all this bullshit. He should have never been out there. Okay. Um, there's some evidence to suggest that he was lured out there because Biggie had a lot of, like anybody, a lot of trepidations about going out there. And a good friend of his lured him out there, talked him into going out there. Now, from some of the stuff I read, this good friend may have been coerced by Puffy to convince Biggie to go out there. I don't know what to believe. You know what I'm saying? Um, I do know this. Whoever was behind it, it was definitely a setup. Okay? It was definitely a setup. The whole situation. He goes down there that night after the Soul Train Awards. They're at that party, and it's just an ugly atmosphere. There's a lot of, from what I've heard and read and listened to, there was a lot of gang signs being thrown up, West Coast signs being thrown up, with motherfuckers looking at Notorious B.I.G. You know what I'm saying? Um, I've heard of situations where People have said, eyewitnesses have said that P Diddy constantly kept leaving the table, like as if he felt like motherfuckers might shoot him or something. You know, whatever the situation was, it seemed like other people knew what was going to happen except for Biggie. And then shortly thereafter, after he left, Biggie gets shot. Now, the reason why I say that I don't know what happened, and I don't know exactly who was behind it, because some people will tell you P. Diddy. Gene Deal will tell you he thinks P. Diddy was behind it. That's Biggie's from a bodyguard. I don't know. Because then there's some people that'll tell you, and there's some evidence to suggest this, that the person that was intended to get shot that night was actually P. Diddy, not Biggie. I don't know. Um, I don't know what happened. All I know is that that night we were robbed of one of the greatest, if not the greatest lyricists of all time, greatest flow I ever heard, one of the top rappers. And I remember reading that he died with 5 unreleased songs in his head. Um, and it was so fucked up because his album, which he was promoting out there, had not quite dropped yet, if I'm not mistaken. I think Life After Death dropped, what was it, 2 weeks after he died? And ultimately, it went it went diamond. It sold 10 million copies. Um, it's just odd. Biggie's greatest peak popularity came after his death. After his death, I would say, yeah, 1997 was the year Biggie Smalls or Notorious B.I.G. It is suspicious that P. Diddy catapulted to fame after that. And after P. Diddy, can we really say that there's ever been any other bad boy artist that has even come close to Notorious B.I.G.'s success? It's always been P. Diddy's overshadowing everybody. And, when you look at the Shine situation and others, if you get in trouble, P. Diddy is not going to have your back. So that's why people look at him suspiciously. Years after his death, Pac was still putting out albums because he was so, which helped to fuel rumors that he was still alive. But he was such a prolific songwriter, such a prodigious artist that he had so much material. I think, like I said, I think when he died, he still had 400 unreleased songs. I think there's still unreleased material from him. So that's why I say, man, we lost two of the greatest artists that the hip hop has ever seen. You might debate whether there might have been better rappers, but as far as their influence and what they should have been, Biggie was about to release a clothing line, and Pac was probably eventually going to get into politics. He already had crossed over to acting, was a brilliant actor. This is a terrible, terrible situation. I don't even like talking about it too much, man. But tell me what you guys think.